Today's episode is brought to you by the Western Extension Risk Management Education Center, USDA NIFA, and the University of Hawaii College of Tropical Ag and Human Resources, and the Livestock Extension Group.
Aloha and welcome everyone to the Livestock Wala'au, a podcast aimed to provide educational support, information, guidance, and outreach to our livestock stakeholders in Hawaii. We are your hosts, Mele Oshiro and
Shannon Sand.
And today we're going to be talking about swine management with Dr. Thomas Pittsnick. Thank you, Doctor, for joining us today.
Yes.
Yeah. Anytime. Yeah, I really enjoy the opportunity and looking forward to visiting soon.
Yeah. We're very excited to have you here. So Dr. Petznick is a veterinarian specializing in swine, and he owns his own swine-specific practice, ArkCare in Nebraska. And I'm going to count on you here, Dr. Petznick, to correct me if I say anything wrong. He works with a wide variety of pork producers and has worked in the past with the CTAH Extension swine specialist, Dr. Helena Zaleski, although we all just call her Dr. Z here, to help conduct swine surveys and workshops in Samoa. So thank you, Dr. Petznick, for joining us today. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you came to specialize in swine care? Yeah,
sure. I would love to. I grew up in rural Nebraska and still live in Nebraska now, but I developed my love for agriculture by being here and being in it. We always had a few cows, a few pigs. My dad had a full-time job, but at the same time, he always had that ag background. And so that stuck with me. And as I grew up, I enjoyed the animals more so than the plants. It was just more my passion. And then I just always enjoyed when the veterinarian came and loved his problem solving skills and his ability to help us, right? And help our animals.
Yeah.
So very quickly that became what I really wanted to do. As I got into my first or second year of college, I kind of said, I want to be a veterinarian. So I've always mostly focused on livestock. I had a brief mixed animal practice background after I graduated from Kansas State University. That's where I got my veterinary degree, and did a brief stint in mixed animal practice. And actually, my first love was dairy, and so I really wanted to be a dairy practitioner. And the mixed practice I went to was mostly dairy, but as I was building my acumen that way, they asked me. Because the guy I was replacing was the swine specialist within their practice, and he left. They asked if I would pick that up, and then what I really found out that is what I wanted was the population medicine. I really enjoyed working with those large populations and helping set up herd health programs and so forth. And so that really then quickly shifted as my whole world changed. So now I spend the vast majority of my time every day focused on pigs.
Cool. That's very interesting. Yeah. Wow. So, I mean, I think, coming from Nebraska and looking at production practices across all these different locations. I mean, even in the States, it must differ, right? A lot in the different areas that you are, but there must be some general guidelines that swine producers can sort of follow. And you said you work a lot with building herd health programs. I'm sure those general guidelines probably cross over no matter what area you're in. So can you share a little bit about some of those guidelines that folks can use regardless of where their locations are?
Yes, for sure. I've been blessed with a very wide variety of the producers that I work with, and Hawaii just added to that, right? And so it's just different, and there's even probably more variety in Hawaii of people that might be as simple as backdoor or outside their back door, and then some that do the full-fledged. I mean, you would think it was a commercial sow farm up on the mainland, and so it's been really rewarding that way. But you're right. There's true basics that we have to cover all the time, and those are the same even in some of our all natural. Trying to get away from antibiotic use and all that. Is it really all starts with something that's not even deep into the biology, that it takes training like what I've had to do is air, water, and feed. And it's amazing though how often we do a poor job in one or more of those areas, and that sets everything into a cascade needing, advanced help. And so I really try to make sure that we don't just go in and talk bugs and drugs.
Right.
It's about how are we doing with quality comfort. So an example, even within Hawaii that I've seen, and a lot of people don't think about it, is they think, well, it's warm down here, so we don't, everything's fine. We don't need to worry about how warm our pigs are. Well, that's probably true for sows, but I've seen when we wean baby pigs and put them into where they start to go on feed, is that it might be 55 at night, or if there's a cool breeze coming through, and you'll actually chill them, and they'll get sick from the stress. And
depending on where you live here, it can get quite cool at night depending on the time of year, so I can imagine.
Yeah. So I think that's really where I like to start, and we'll talk a lot about that during the workshops. Is how are we doing with what God gave us, or our Creator gave us, and that's the air that the pigs get to breathe. Their comfort is included in that, and then also the cleanliness of water, plenty of ample water, and then the quality of the food, whatever food stuff that we pick. So that's really where I start, and that is definitely a mainstay, no matter. I don't care if you're a 35,000 sow operation, or if you've got 3 pigs. That's true. Now, when it comes to the health, going beyond that, really we also then start talking about just simple things like where we've taken a lot of pigs off of dirt in some scenarios, even within Hawaii, is getting iron in the baby piglets is really, really important at a time because they don't get that. You normally get that from the dirt. So when we take them off of dirt, we have to give that to them in the form of a shot. And then really the other one that I've noticed that gets missed at times is just the general broad sense of parasite control. And that would include internal parasites of the worms, and then also external parasites like lice, mange, ticks, that kind of thing. And so very, very simple and actually economic ways to take care of that. So that's where we really start with. Those are things, even before we get into the vast viruses and bacteria that can become a problem. If we don't have those bases covered, it's really hard to step into the next step.
Right. Yeah. And I think, you talk about air all over, we kind of think that, we're in Hawaii, it's so warm, but really it's not, and I think some of the animals that are raised here, they get acclimated right to our temperatures as well. So when it does drop down, and I mean, in some areas on the islands, we'll get lower in the high 40s at some parts of the year. So that's an important thing to consider for your younger animals.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you talked a little bit. So you worked a little bit of time, I think, down in the Pacific Islands, in Samoa, and in some of these other tropical production systems here in Hawaii. So can you want to talk a little bit about some of the general health concerns, I guess, that you see, not just in our systems that you may have seen here, but across the systems in general for our health producers, and like what they should be looking at and be concerned with in their health for their swine?
Yeah, when it comes to the viral aspects, I mean, and it's definitely touched Hawaii as well, as PRRS, porcine reproductive and respiratory syndrome, and it's just been a real devastating one. Right now, I would have to say in my area of Nebraska, we usually have a pretty good control of that. Even 2 years ago, I was at a point where all my clients were negative to PRRS. Everything was thriving. And right now it's the worst I've ever seen in all the years. And I graduated in 1995. And that was kind of when PRRS really first started to become an issue that we had identified, and we knew what virus was causing it. And we're really at an all-time low as far as of control right now. So it's been very, very hard. We're actually in a pig shortage up here because of that. So that's really the one. And I know in speaking with people and a few experiences that I've had even in Hawaii, that we feel it down there. Right. And so PRRS control is a really big one. Some real simple things with porcine circovirus too. Now, the nice thing with that one is that's easy. If we have a good vaccination protocol, that's an easy one to deal with in that regard. But then the other one that I see common actually to both places is kind of the early wean pig diarrhea diseases. PED, porcine epidemic diarrhea virus is a real devastating one that can just knock out 2 to 3 weeks worth of baby piglets. So and the nice thing is there's really nice if we can get the education out there and the tools to people, there's really good ways to get rid of that.
Yeah.
But then even just the simple E. coli, salmonella, those types of things I've found, fairly commonly. And then there's a few that are more. It used to be more common up here, but then as we've gone to internal confinement, we don't fight as much as like leptospira. Lepto in pigs, we've actually found some positive titers before in Hawaii. We have a runoff and a little bit we have to watch with the water, and then swine dysentery. So I currently don't have any swine dysentery herds except for those that I deal with in Hawaii. So yeah, there's a lot of commonality with the pig diseases that we fight, but at the same time, there's some things that are more unique to the different areas too.
Yeah. Yeah. I can imagine some of the water stuff would be unique to Hawaii because depending on the herds and where you're working with, they might be on catchment, they might be on just different water sources than what you typically have access to on the mainland. So I can imagine that would be, Yeah.
And one of the mainstays I like to do is I think some people fear that when I come there, I'm going to say, oh, you can't do it this way. You can't raise pigs because that's not how we do it on the main. That's not it at all. We adapt and we're flexible to how people, what their facility is capable of doing, what they're capable of doing. That's really the key is there's not a one size fits all. It's finding the solution that best fits. You go back to those basic principles and you say, here, we would all agree that this is what we need to have happen. Now, how do we make that happen within your individual system?
Yeah, exactly. You want to touch a little bit more on PRRS. So I know here in the state where Kauai is the only island right now that is PRRS free. So there is a quarantine, or I should say not quarantine, but there is a restriction on movement, right, of animals. Can you touch a little bit about PRRS and like it's just its impact to the herd and maybe like what's the transmission and whatnot, and provide a little background on the virus itself?
Yeah. So the virus, again, as its name says, is it affects animals reproductively in the form of abortions or infertility. It especially affects the late gestation, so sows that are maybe just a month or so or a few weeks from farrowing. The PRRS makes its way into the uterus and infects the piglets a lot simpler in the later stages. And then even those piglets that are born and contract it later, they're just a lot more susceptible. It puts a real drag on the immune system. It actually attacks immune cells within the pig. And so all those little secondary infections that we don't normally fight become a problem. And so therefore we end up using a lot more antibiotics in that regard. So the nice part of it is it can be eradicated or eliminated from a farm with an exposure program and what we call a herd closure. And but that's usually the hardest commitment to get people to do is to not bring pigs in for a while, right?
Right.
Yeah. And then once we get negative, the challenge is how do I stay without exposure to that?
That's what I was wondering. I was like, how does that work? Because I was like, that's one of those things. Those diseases sometimes are just so easy to transmit. If like I go and visit your herd like in Nebraska, but then go to a gas station, I might pick up something someone else has been somewhere else and then go so I mean.
Yeah. So we have to just, the good news is what we look at, and it's similar to what some other, like regular businesses outside of agriculture do is hazard analysis critical control points, or some people call it HACCP. They'll actually get a certification that way. Right. And what it is to target where are the hazards at and what critical control point do I put in place. So I can tell you if I went and rolled in a buck, poured a bucket of PRRS virus all over me, if I do the right steps and from the time I'm exposed to the way that I get into to visit a herd that doesn't have PRRS, I 100% can eliminate the risk, but we have to be disciplined in that. And we just have that kind of loose social kind of quality, especially within the islands. I see that, they're very social. I mean, not that we aren't up here as well, but you guys
it's a different kind of social. As someone who's lived both places and Mele's lived a few different places as well. I think like I can definitely say it's a different kind of social.
Yes,
like,
and it goes really deep, and it kind of comes into is ohana and all that you guys talk about, and then you live that, and you feel it when you as you spend more time down there, and so it's very hard not to be just very intimate with our relationships and so forth, but we have to draw guidelines and say, listen, this is great, but please do this and do this and do this. And so we know it can be carried on inanimate objects. We know that certainly the greatest risk, and that's what I work with. Actually, I worked with the state of Hawaii on is what regulations do we need when we bring semen, that we export in from the outside, or when we bring live animals, that's the number one way to transmit it. So my biggest concern, and honestly, if we can just control. It's not uncommon in the islands which we would never do that up here is well, can I borrow or rent your boar? Well, I'm now taking that animal, and it might not even be PRRS or whatever, I'm taking a live animal that has certain bugs and maybe they don't look sick, but then I bring them into my herd and my herd from the outside. And it's like all of a sudden you can all hell can break loose, right? And it's just that simple, not thinking that through.
Makes sense. Okay.
Yeah. So the good news is there if people are willing to really think, and be disciplined with it, we can set up individual programs to eliminate it. We do have a little bit of concern though, rodents, flies, even a little bit of just short aerosol transmission can happen, in the wind and those types of things that can spread it as well. So we just try to we control what we can. And that seems to help a lot right there.
Yeah. So is artificial insemination a potential option to like help limit some of that? Because I know one of our retired agents, Mike DuPont, did a lot of work on teaching local producers here, like how to AI their own like pigs and production and stuff. So I was like, I think I know he did a lot of work on biosecurity related to some of that, I think. So yeah,
the beautiful part of that is so if you have infected semen, you will infect sow farms. That's a proven fact. But then the nice part of having a source of semen that you can bring in is most of those boar studs, and I would only recommend those that do the testing. Do very aggressive testing to make sure that their semen is safe. And so from that regard, that is why that is a good biosecurity aspect to put in. But it's only as good as the protocol. So what I really work with my producers on is, hey, when you're going to make that change, if you're thinking about introducing an animal from another farm, if you're thinking about making a change in the semen source, anything like that, we do what we call a vet to vet. And it honestly doesn't have to be between two veterinarians. It just has to be between two people that really understand the health of their herds and say, is that going to work or is that not going to work? What degree of confidence do we have that we're not going to create an issue when we make that change?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. I think it would be more likely to be like person to person because we have a limited number of vets available here. So for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think that brings I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry. As you'll see, as we do the workshops, is we're going to be very focused. So we are starting on Kauai, knowing that's the cleanest. And then we'll work our way backwards through what we would call a biosecurity pyramid.
For safety, is that kind of?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So we'll have disposable boots. We'll be using things like boot washes. I mean, you'll see all that we feel comfortable. We can get a lot of workshops done in a short period of time, but not put anybody at risk.
Right.
That's exciting. Since you are coming here, can you share some about what the workshops and lectures will be about? So kind of tease it out for people.
Yeah. So I really hope, I mean, if you have a chance and even if you can't stay all day, if we can just start to build some relationship, and even if you learn one thing that you take home that makes you better and keeps your pigs healthier, that's really what it's about. We don't like to see the pigs suffer, right? They're maybe not to the degree of pet that a dog or a cat or another animal might be, but
sometimes they are though. I know some people that they are. They're
yes. So but anyway, so hopefully everybody, I really encourage you, please get out, even if it's just for a short while. It's going to be, I think it'll be very enjoyable. They always have been when I came down and done some others. But anyway, it'll touch a lot on just exactly what we're talking about. And the nice part of it, though, is we'll be able to take on-site assessment and be able to say, okay, here's where this particular principle applies, right? Whether it's a biosecurity thing, as we're like, how do we keep this farm safe as we understand them? A lot of it is taking what we know and then how we apply it to each individual case. Every farm is a different petri dish, is how we might do it. And petri dish being, how we can culture things onto a plate, and that's its own world, right? Well, every farm is really just a big petri dish, and we have to treat each one a little bit differently than the next. So we'll be hitting on common things with feed, water, air. We'll be hitting biosecurity. We'll actually go through, we'll spend some time on disease as well. And again, we're flexible, and we'll kind of go with what the audience is looking for and what the individual farms that host us are looking for. We've spent some time in the past. We'll hopefully do some sampling, and because that's one of the key roles here is hopefully we get some veterinarians out there. So if you have any interest out there and you're a veterinarian, make sure you come. We're always looking. I can't be in Hawaii all the time, and unfortunately, and we also have some of the time gap, but we need people, boots on the ground, that and anything I can do to help them make them feel comfortable going into that setting. And then we start developing relationships, and I can always be a resource from the outside as well. Yeah. So I think really all of that is what you can expect to see. There's no question that's stupid, and there's nothing that we won't entertain to help people learn.
Yeah,
that's good.
Yeah, and to just let folks know that the workshop is essentially, it's an educational workshop for veterinarians, veterinarian technicians, and our other extension agents that deal with livestock out there. And we're also going to have a public lecture that goes along with every workshop. And the lecture is going to be open to any swine producer that wants to join us. Please let us know. The information will go out and will be shared on our podcast page, as well as the Livestock Extension Group page. And you'll probably get it in other areas if you're on any of the listservs for any of the veterinarian programs here in the state. So yeah, we're very excited to have this workshop. It'll be one of the first in-person workshops that we're able to hold for livestock as since the pandemic. So, we're excited to be able to get out there and be able to see people face to face. Well, sort of. I guess we still have to be masked, but, sort of face to face. But yeah, so thank you so much for joining us today.
Yes, thank you.
Dr. Pittsnick, is there anything else you'd like to add for our listeners about your tips for them in their swine production management?
Well, I would just say that one of the key things is understand what your goals are, and then surround yourself with really smart people, and not even just the intelligence side, but smart from that they're passionate about what they're doing. And there are so many resources. The probably the biggest, most impressive part of when I come to Hawaii is the support that you guys provide through Extension, for one, through CTAH. Even the state has always been super involved and always really welcome. I think you have a really unique situation there. We have those same resources up here, but it seems like it's been so amplified with what I see down there. And so make sure that you're relying on those people to keep you and your pigs happy and productive. And like I said, please do come out. We'll have a great time. I'm so looking forward to coming back, breathing the air, giving, we'll probably sneak a few hugs in, even though with COVID, but from that standpoint, and eating great food. So I'm looking forward to sharing stories and having a great time.
Thank you so much again for joining us. And we hope our listeners have found some of this information very informative to them, and encouraged to sign up for the workshop when you see the registration links come out. And also If you haven't done so already, please fill out our feedback fest. The link will be in our show notes for everyone, and give us your thoughts about this podcast and all the rest of the topics that we have covered.
Make sure to join our Facebook page, the Livestock Extension Group, if you haven't already. And be sure to visit the UH-CTAH Extension website and our YouTube channel listed in the show notes below.
That's right. And for additional information about this topic, see the show notes of the podcast and the description box, again, of the YouTube page. Thanks for listening to the Livestock Wala'au. And before we go, show some love for your favorite podcasts. That's us, by the way, by leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts. Then stay tuned for next month's episode. Ahuiho. Thanks again.
Thanks again to our sponsors, the Western Extension Risk Management Education Center, USDA NIFA, the Livestock Extension Group, and CTAR.
Ahuiho.
Mahalo.